Hello fine fellows, and welcome to what is week 4 of my Wegovy journey and the last week of the starting dose for me. Yeah, that's right, the next video I'm going to be moving up to the 4mg dose. Now I'm not quite sure why I'm recording this video laying down at the moment, but you know, thought it'd be a bit different. Let's just hope I don't fall asleep halfway through I'm joking. Although I did have a very terrible night's sleep last night, so that is actually a possibility. But yeah, hopefully this week I'm going to go through, I guess, like, not just what's been happening on the pill, but maybe actually dive into a bit of the science behind these pills and things. I thought for people just tuning in, they might want to know a bit about the pills themselves. And again, although I'm not a medical professional in any way, shape or form, I can give a little bit of a rundown on how these GLP-1 medications work, and then we'll just look maybe a bit more into detail of things like, you know, the actual weight loss side of it, and what's been happening in terms of muscle loss and weight loss and fat loss, and you know, just give a bit of a rundown. You know, I've got some scales that can give me a bit of an insight into that. So that is kind of the plan for this week, and just to dive into it, you know, just in a little bit more detail, and also share my experiences with you. So I'm going to stop waffling on, and we will cut straight to the first video. So see you soon, like. Hello, and welcome to what is day 23 of my Wegovy pill journey. Yeah, we're into the last week before I step up dosages into the 4mg dose. Yep, I think that's right. So yeah, we're just going to talk a little bit what's happened the last couple of days since I last spoke to you. There's not been a huge amount of change. The nausea has really sort of been continuing on the rise, which I find extremely strange. I spoke a little bit last time about how I was going to speak to the clinicians about whether to increase the dose to 3, you know, 2 doses of 1.5, so into 3mg before starting the 4. But unfortunately, they actually haven't got back to me, which is strange because they've usually been really quick. The last 2 times I messaged them about side effects, they were back to me within like an hour. But I actually haven't heard back from them in 2 days-ish. So not quite sure where I'm going to go from in terms of that. But I just, you know, there is a little bit of me that is a bit anxious because of how sick or because of how nauseous I'm feeling on the 1.5 at the moment. I am a bit scared of jumping straight into a 4, but we'll see how things go. You know, if they don't respond to me, then I'm going to just take that leap based on their original recommendations and jump straight into the 4, but I'll let you know how that goes for me. But remember, everybody is different, so just take this with a pinch of salt. I'm just bringing you my experience. In terms of good, more weight loss. I will flash it up on screen. Let me just have a... Yep, so I'll flash it up on screen here. We are now weighing at 15 stone 6.6, and my starting weight was 16 stone 4. So that's quite a substantial weight loss. In theory, that means I lost like around a pound between yesterday and today, but you have to be careful with these things. You know, it can just be water loss, and it can just fluctuate for various reasons, whether you've been toilet, things like, you know, what time of day, because, you know, I usually get up between 8 or 9, but sometimes, you know, I can weigh myself at 5 past 8, and other times it can be, you know, 5 to 9, so there can be a bit of difference. So I take that with a pinch of salt. I think it's more important, even though I'm weighing daily, to look at it over the course, the sort of trend over the course of a week or a month. But it's quite interesting to look. I was speaking to my mum about it this morning, actually. She's on a diet herself. I've noticed that my body fat, I'll try and flash up on screen actually the trend if I can. I'm not sure if it's there. Basically, it appears as though my body fat has kind of stalled and just been a bit up and down, and there's more of a decline actually in the muscle mass. Now obviously the scales I'm using, they're the Renpho Body Morph Nova scales or something. Again, not sponsored. They are meant to be quite accurate in terms of the different biomarkers. I think they're meant to be within sort of 90% of a DEXA scan. A DEXA scan's like an X-ray machine. It's sort of the gold standard that tells you all about your body fat and your muscle mass and things. And these scales are meant to be very close to them. But yeah, it just seems a little bit strange to me. I mean, I have been eating a lot of protein really, but I haven't really been doing weights as much as I should, and I know that's something that's important to do when you're, you know, on a strict weight loss diet, especially on like these pills. But I wouldn't have thought I would have seen muscle loss at this point already at all. So, you know, I'm not 100% believing what the scales are saying at the moment, but I still just found that was quite interesting. There's lots of things you can see on there, like things like bone mass as well and stuff, but I'm not really quite sure how that would relate to these pills and the weight loss journey at all, to be honest. But yeah, so I just thought that was a bit interesting. So that's something I'm going to keep an eye on. I'll keep hopefully coming back to that every so often, just so we can keep an eye on it. You know, just check that it's not muscle wastage, because that's something that I really, really want to, you know, I want to keep my muscle mass as high as I can while losing weight. I'm expecting a little bit to drop because it's natural. If your body's, you know, in a sort of calorie deficit and starving, so to speak, or whatever, then it is possible to lose muscle mass. But I want to try and keep that at bay as much as possible. I can't talk today. Now, in terms of the diet, I've actually been doing quite well. I haven't felt starved, but I've been, you know, in and around my calorie goal, which is really good. Again, I assume this is a slightly positive effect of the pills, that I'm not struggling so bad. I have been having a lot of cravings in the night, but I always have. There has been the odd occasion, which I shouldn't do because you're meant to fast 8 hours before these tablets, but I have had the odd, you know, skinny diet bar in the middle of the night, which is really bad. But if the scales are telling the truth, then I'm still losing weight doing that. So we'll just, yeah, we'll keep that one hushed for now. But I wouldn't suggest doing that. Snacking at night isn't the best. And yeah, and one of the other things that I really did want to talk about on this first video is fluids and water intake. I've realised the last few days that actually that's one of the things I've kind of been struggling with the most. I showed on the last video that I have a water intake app that reminds you to sort of take water, and you can see how much water you've been having, but I really think it has diminished my thirst cues. You know, I think it's that and a little bit of me being scared of drinking water too quick, and this is a problem with reading things online, I think. But before I started taking these pills, I used to chug quite a bit of water in the morning and things and drink with meals, and then I read people saying, you know, don't do that on these because it will really fill you up and can make you feel, you know, sick and stuff. So people were saying to, you know, be sort of drink your water slower, basically. So I feel like I've been struggling quite a bit with my water. I was quite good the first couple of weeks, but recently, you know, I've been waking up in the morning and getting a bottle of water and then drinking it sort of slowly. But sometimes I've been finishing that first bottle of water at like 12 or 1 in the afternoon. And it's kind of like, that's not enough fluids really, in my opinion, for that period of time. Yeah, and sometimes I've not been hitting my sort of 2 to 3 litre goal that I set either. Sometimes I've looked back and I've had less than 2 litres a day and just feel really thirsty all the time, like especially in the evening. It's like the first cues are gone in the first part of the morning almost completely after I first take the tablet, and then they sort of come back with a vengeance at night. It's kind of strange. I just don't really feel like I want to drink all the time, or at all really. Yeah, it's very strange. It's kind of hard to explain actually. I feel like I've just contradicted myself quite a bit, because I have been gasping for a drink at night, but I also like kind of don't feel like I want to drink. Very, very hard to explain actually. But yeah, so that's just something I've been struggling with a little bit of. So I'm trying to do a little bit better. I mean, you can sort of hear I've got a dry throat now. So I'm going to try and do a bit better with that. And actually lean on the app a bit more to really remind me. So, you know, I'll set maybe a timer for 11 o'clock to make sure that I've had that first sort of 600 mils of water by 11. So, you know, and then set the next one after that, an hour or two after that, just to make sure I'm getting some getting a good amount of fluids in me. And I think really, to be honest, for this video, this first video, that's kind of going to be where we're at. I'm going to try and bring you some more information on the pills themselves and a bit of the research behind that in the next video, and also hopefully going to bring you a exercise video just to show some of the strength training I've been doing, just in case you're interested. You're probably not. I wouldn't be if I was you, but whatever. I'm making these videos for me. No, well, kind of. Yeah, so that's kind of the plan for the next video. So this one's kind of not very informative, but you know, I hope you gathered some sort of information from it, maybe. And with that being said, I will see you again soon, and you should see me again in 2 seconds on a different day. That's how this kind of works. I don't know what I'm saying. Hey folks, and welcome to this section of the video. I wanted to bring something a little bit different to you now, and I realise in hindsight this is probably something I should have sort of spoke about at the very beginning of my journey. But anyway, here we are. I think it's still, you know, good for anyone that's just joining the journey now, or anyone that's been on the journey a while but doesn't know much about the medication. You know, it's a good way for us to have a little chat about the medication itself. So I'd just like to throw out the disclaimer first, like you probably saw at the beginning of the video. I am not a medical professional or a doctor or anything in any way, shape or form. I'm bringing you these videos basically because I've, you know, studied the medications enough and done enough research that I feel I am educated enough to bring you this information. But please note, like I say, I am not a scientist, I am not a doctor, I am not a healthcare professional or anything in any way, shape or form. So please keep that in mind. But with that being said, let's talk a little bit about GLP-1 and GLP-1 medications. So in order to talk about the GLP-1 medications themselves, we first really have to talk about our own biology. So in our bodies, we have a hormone that gets produced by the intestines that is known as glucagon-like peptides 1, GLP-1. And when food hits our guts, this hormone will basically act as a messenger, and it will talk to the brain and tell it, hey, we've had some food and we're getting full. Now the problem is with this natural hormone we've got, it kind of just doesn't last very long. You know, it lasts maybe somewhere between 2 and 3 minutes, and that is it. So where do the medications come in all this? Well, medications like Wegovy are known as GLP-1 agonists, and they basically work in the same way as GLP-1, even though they are manufactured. You've got to think of it as like a lock and key. We have a GLP-1 receptor that the GLP-1 usually goes in, and GLP-1 agonists just basically act as like a fake key in the lock. And what this does is it tricks your body into thinking that you are basically full for a lot longer than you actually are. Unlike the GLP-1 that's naturally produced, these GLP-1 agonists cling on, and the enzyme that breaks them down, they're basically indestructible to that. So instead of having, you know, 2 or 3 minutes of that I'm full feeling, in theory this lasts a hell of a lot longer. It does vary by the medications, but yeah, it's effectively indestructible to those enzymes. Yeah, it lasts a lot longer and gives much more of a sort of steady signal to the brain. And these GLP-1 agonists work in a few different ways in order to basically have the desired effects that people like. And first off is that they target and diminish the food noise that a lot of us have. You see, these GLP-1 agonists, they will basically target the hypothalamus, the center of your brain that's associated with hunger, and they basically make you feel a lot more satisfied for a lot longer. See, a lot of us that struggle with our weight and yo-yo diet, we struggle with this sort of constant food noise and constantly thinking about and craving foods. So the GLP-1s are very good at diminishing that. And another thing that they do that I believe I've mentioned a few times on the videos before is that they slow your gastric emptying. They basically slow the amount of time it takes for food to get through your stomach. So your stomach is fuller for longer, literally, and that causes feelings of fullness for longer, and that again can help so you're not snacking as much, and you basically just feel more satiated. Like I say, it really slows down how your stomach empties and slows everything down, and just, yeah, makes you feel a lot fuller for longer. And the third thing that these do is they target the pancreas and they help with insulin regulation. You see, when we eat sugars and carbs, our body releases insulin in order to break down the sugar for us to use. And GLP-1 medications help the pancreas release just the perfect amount of insulin. And they also stop the release of glucagon, which basically puts sugar into your body. And effectively what these medications do is help keep your blood sugar nice and stable so you don't have any crashes and any particular highs. And what that will do is also just then keep your appetite a bit at bay, so you're not, really craving food and craving sugars. And yeah, and that's basically how it affects the pancreas and insulin. And these three things together basically help people to lose weight. The drugs were originally designed for use with diabetes. As we discussed, they work on insulin and blood sugar, so they were originally diabetes medication. And all these scientists and that basically noted that people that were using them for diabetes, as a sort of part of the medications, were also losing weight in the process. And then, as it happens, they then basically got approved for use for obese people. But as we've noted on several of the videos before, these are really meant to sort of be used as tools. You're meant to use them alongside a healthy diet and exercise in order to lose weight. They're not a be-all and end-all cure. They have worked really well for a hell of a lot of people, but there are also a lot of side effects and things to consider. I believe there's a lot of people out there in this sort of vanity culture that are already at healthy weights that are using them, just to lose a few pounds and get like summer ready. And I think that's where a lot of the sort of danger lies. These medications are meant, they're originally for diabetes only, and now for diabetes and weight loss for obese individuals who, are on the verge of having a lot of health problems. I was seeing in myself, I was technically obese. I should weigh around 10.5 stone, and I weigh at my heaviest over 16. So, I was starting to see some things like high blood pressure and cholesterol issues. And I just believe that these pills were right for me in my situation. But everyone is different. And I believe, these need to be used carefully, basically. They really need to be assessed. I'm hoping videos like my ones and other channels giving sort of real, honest, giving their real honest views and honest experiences on these pills might help. But yeah, as you know, originally people were mostly using the jab form of these medications. And the thing is with the jab form, you take it once a week, whereas with the pills they're a daily thing. So that's something to consider. The injections, if you're considering them, they also have to be refrigerated, where the pills don't. There's a lot of different differences between the pills and the injections. And with these drugs, there are also different types of these GLP-1 agonists. You may have heard of semaglutide and tirzepatides. Semaglutides, you have Wegovy, like I'm taking, and Ozempic, which a lot of you would have heard of. Then on the tirzepatides, you have Mounjaro and Zepbound, and there are others as well, but they're the main ones I know of. So most GLP-1 agonists and the semaglutides like Wegovy and Ozempic, they just target one GLP receptor, while tirzepatides like Mounjaro and Zepbound, they actually do two GLP-1 receptors, and therefore you will usually see greater effects, more weight loss on the tirzepatides as opposed to the semaglutides. And there are other ones out there as well. So yeah, I hope that's kind of shed a little bit of a light on these medications. Like I say, I do know a bit more about them, so if anyone has any questions, you can leave them in the comments. Like I say, I have done a ridiculous amount of research on these before I started taking them, even though when I speak, it probably sounds like I don't know what I'm talking about, because I have, trouble talking sometimes. Yeah, like I say, if you have any questions at all, either do your research yourself, feel free to ask me any questions, and I will try to do my best to answer them as accurately as humanly possible. And that being said, let's just jump straight into the next video. See ya. Wouldn't want to be. I'm joking. I love you. I'm sorry. Hello, 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 folkies, and welcome to what is day 25 of my Wegovy pill journey. I'm in a slightly different space this time, and I can only apologise for the absolute abysmal amount of mess over this side. This is usually my sort of computer room, but recently it's become where I've been shoving everything when I've been moving things around, so it is absolutely horrendous. So naturally I'm going to try and put any graphics I put up over this side naturally. Anyway, so back to it. So let's have a little update on what's happened sort of the last couple of days and anything that's changed. So one thing that I have sort of really been struggling on, I'll start, with the sort of negatives, I guess you could argue at the moment. One of the things I've been noticing actually is that I've been sort of feeling really kind of quite lazy, and I'm not necessarily putting this down to the pills. It could just be a massive coincidence. It could be because I haven't been sleeping great, but I was thinking of it earlier because I've been eating sort of good, under calories and everything, but my food choices haven't actually been 100% perfect. I really wanted to and said I was going to start this week, and I did do pretty good, but I said I was going to do a really clean week of just eating whole foods and really healthy foods and really try and sort of nail the diet in. But actually I've kind of been struggling, I was always, before when I was on diets, really good at like hitting protein goals and things, but even that's gone quite out the window. Most times after I've had meals, instead of having a snack like a protein shake, something like I would before, I've sort of just been reaching for sort of plain, easy foods and foods that I know will sit well in my stomach sort of thing, and it's just almost like a natural instinct at the minute that I just don't want sort of dairy products and creamy stuff necessarily. It's really hard to explain, but I used to always actually really enjoy having protein shakes and things, and they used to keep me fuller. But I've been really struggling to hit my goals. I think we'll actually, because I think it's been a while since I've done this, but let's have a little run through what I've eaten the last couple of days, and you'll see what I mean. It's really not been a good diet necessarily in terms of healthy food. Calorie wise, great, but that's not everything, and I really wanted to tackle my overall health as opposed to just losing weight whilst on these tablets. So let's have a little look. I'll bring it up on my phone. So we'll start with yesterday. So I had some Belvita breakfast biscuits. Now I actually ate these in the middle of the night, sort of about 11:30, 12, but I thought I'd take them off the next day's calories. So I had them in the middle of the night. That's not good. Really shouldn't be eating at night. It really, it's not good for me personally. I shouldn't be doing it. Then for breakfast, again, I felt quite lazy. I used to always really like having Greek yogurt and blueberries and things, but I had a Fibre One bar, as you'll see. I'll flash this stuff up on screen. For lunch, I went and had a My Protein meal, again, going for the sort of easy, lazy option. This could just be a massive coincidence, but I just think it's worth exploring these things just in case it is, has any correlation at all. And then to get a bit more protein, I reached, instead of for some whole foods again or a shake, I went for a Grenade cream egg chocolate bar, effectively, with added protein. Not the best. For dinner, I did have a salad, which was quite good. It had some feta in it, but it was like quinoa, beetroot, spinach, and then a bit of feta. So that was actually quite healthy. And then a zombie strawberry bar. They are nothing but fruit. Again, that's not too bad, but sort of just always going for the easy options, in my opinion here. Then for supper, I had quite a lot of calories left, so I had a creatine and protein yogurt. That was pretty disgusting, I'm not going to lie. And then I had some of my protein bites that I store in the freezer. Again, sometime I might put up a recipe for those if anyone's interested. And then I had some crisps. Again, really trying to avoid crisps, but I was just reaching for easy things again. You see what I mean? It's kind of not where I want to be at, and I want to improve that. So that's something that I definitely want to work on. And then just the usual drinks, although again I said I was going to stop having fizzy energy drinks, but you'll see that I did have a sugar-free but a fizzy Monster. So I'm breaking all my own little rules here. And let's flash up today's then. I don't think I'll be eating anything else for today, not much at all. So this is basically a complete diary for today. So again, started the morning, instead of going for eggs, something nutritious, or like Greek yogurt or blueberries like I usually do, I grabbed a protein bar, 258 calorie, 20 gram of protein, smart, PhD smart protein bar, white chocolate. Again, not the best option in my opinion. I did have a good lunch. I did have my go-to meal, which if you flash back to the previous video, I actually cooked it on stream if you want to see what this meal is. But it's basically 5% beef mince. I went for 75 grams, spinach, green beans, scrambled eggs, egg whites, bit of soy sauce. Then, because I was basically eating the crusts from my dad's food that he had from his bread, I had Warburton's slice of sourdough, but it was basically the crusts, and probably actually works out a little bit less than a full loaf, but a full slice, sorry, loaf. Jesus, I did not eat a loaf. With a little tiny bit of tomato ketchup and a Welsh cake, just because they needed to be eaten, but again, not really great, not for me. It's not great for me anyway. Then for dinner I had some chicken bao bun sliders, some hot sauce. I think I might be suffering later after having that hot sauce. A strawberry zombie bar again, and then I had a little ham sandwich and one Oreo for supper. So again, if you see what I'm trying to say, it's like I've been just reaching for the easy options, been feeling quite lazy. And I have seen other people mention this on the pills. So maybe it's a coincidence. You know, I'm only on the starting dose, so I don't believe it should be affecting this much, but just felt super lazy the last couple of days. But you'll see as well, I didn't mention it from yesterday's, but if you look at today's protein, I've only hit 115 out of my goal of 166, and that goal's on the lower side really. And yesterday, I'll flash it back up. 119, it's about the same. So not been hitting my protein. In terms of workouts as well, like I wanted to do 3 this week, and I know the week's not quite finished yet at all, but I've done 2, sorry, I've done two lots, so really not good on that front either. No protein, not doing the weights, I'm probably going to see a bit of muscle loss. You know, this is definitely something I need to work on. You know, I want to bring you what I'm doing right, but also what I'm doing wrong. So yeah, so there's that. So I suppose now we should be talking about the positives, and the main positives, even though I have been sort of reaching for bad foods, I haven't had many cravings at all. I do feel like my food noise has been quite diminished, you know. Once I'm in and around my calorie goal, I haven't been massively craving other food and snacks, so that's good. And I've lost some weight again. I will flash it on screen and you will see I'm pressing all the wrong buttons. Apparently this morning down to 15 stone 5 pounds and 8, and that is, if I have a little look-see, and that means that I have in theory lost around 10 pounds in the 3 weeks I've been doing this. I do recognise a lot of that will be water weight. I am fully aware that that is probably the case, but you know, it's still an okay figure. Maybe on the high side, so hopefully that'll level out to sort of 1 or 2 pounds and won't be too aggressive in the weeks to come. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to how it goes. So, you know, there's been some negatives. I've managed to find some negatives in all of this, but the main goal of losing weight is still on track, which is good. So yeah, that being said, I think this is going to be a bit of a short video, but that's going to effectively be it. Hopefully I have brought you by now a video on the actual sort of what these GLP-1 agonists are and how they work. You know, I recognise that's something that I probably should have done before starting all these videos, but hey ho, whatever, we live and we learn. And I'm also hoping to bring you one of my recorded weight workouts at some point, hopefully after this video as well. So hopefully you have a little bit of you know, a bit of variety in these in this video. But yeah, that being said, I think it's time to go. And again, please don't judge me on all this. You know, it looks awful, and I told you I'm feeling really lazy. I couldn't be bothered to tidy this up before I started recording. Okay, don't judge me. I can hear you all judging me. I think my cup of tea is cold. Nah, it's not too bad. See you later. Hello folks, and welcome to this section of the video. I am bringing you what I did promise a little while ago. I am bringing you a preview of basically the resistance training workouts that I do while on these pills, or should I say should be doing while on these pills. I must admit I have been struggling with the consistency in terms of exercise at the moment, in truth, but I am hoping to get back there and stay consistent and try and do this 3 times a week. I think I've mentioned it many times before, but with these pills sometimes comes quite rapid weight loss, and sometimes with quite rapid weight loss people also tend to see a bit of muscle loss. Whenever you lose a certain amount of weight, you are likely to lose some muscle, and one of the ways you can combat this when you're on a calorie constricted diet is to eat a lot of protein, between sort of 1 to 1.6 times your body weight in protein a day, and to also do some resistance training. I think any is better than nothing, but in general they say to try to lift quite heavy, lift to failure, get your protein right up there, and hopefully you'll maintain a lot of the muscle whilst also losing fat. And for some beginners it is actually possible to gain some muscle whilst losing fat. It is possible, so it's a really good thing to do. So with that being said, I'll run quickly through the app that I use. I've recently got a Fitbit Google Health Air. I'm not actually 100% sure what they're called. So with that, it's it's similar to Whoop and things. It tracks all your heart rate and sleep and things like that, and it also does custom workouts. You can get the AI feature on there to make custom workouts for you, or put your own workouts in. I did a sort of blend of both, and I'll hopefully show some of the screenshots on screen of the sort of interface and a tiny bit of how it works if you have a look. And throughout the montage of me doing my exercises, I'll hopefully flash up so you can see roughly what I'm doing. I try to basically do whole body workouts 3 times a week, but I do tend to just do legs on one of the days. So I'll do the sort of similar workouts. I'll have sort of workout A and workout B. I'll do workout A with squats, then workout B, and then workout A again without squats. So just doing like leg works once a week. But other than that, yeah, it's sort of trying to target all body parts. I have kind of, like I've mentioned, just got back into it, so I'm actually lifting quite a bit lighter than I usually would. I usually kind of probably do roughly 4 kilos extra on the big exercises than I'm doing at the moment. So yeah, so I would usually be lifting a little bit heavier than this, but this is this is my weight resistance exercises basically. So as you may see, I do have quite a limited space in order to work out, but I have got some equipment. I've got some adjustable dumbbells. They save you just basically having to have lots of different sets of different weights of dumbbell. They're a bit bulky, but they do the job. But again, it does limit some of the exercise I can do. And I've got a bench. I think it's a cheap bench that I got from Decathlon, I believe, but again, it does the job. I also do have a exercise bike that I really don't use. It's a Zwift bike. It's quite fancy, but I just don't use it, so I'll probably be getting rid of that soon. But yeah, so that's basically it. So with that being said, let's cut straight to it, I guess. And there you have it. That is about it, basically. I forgot to mention, but I do usually do 3 sets of each exercise. Obviously, I'm not going to film the entire thing and put the whole thing on, but it's just to give you sort of a rough idea, really, what I try to do, and try being the key word. Again, I know my form was pretty dire in a lot of that, but you know, you can watch videos yourself and do a lot of research, see how to do them properly, and just, yeah, I suggest you just research the benefits of doing it, especially when on these pills, and go from there. But yeah, I just thought I'd bring you something a little bit different, and it kind of has helped motivate me to actually do one for a change, so thanks. And with that being said, let's skip to the next part of the video. Au revoir. Hello folks, and welcome to what is day 30 of my Wegovy pill journey. And now you notice it might be a bit strange that we've jumped to day 30, but it basically is because when I was sort of scheduling these videos, I was planning to, you know, talk about the first 2 days of the week, and then the next 2 days of the week, and then the last 3 days of the week, as I had on the previous videos. But I forgot that these pill packets actually contain 30 pills, so basically the last video of the 4 videos in a month will just have a few days added on the end. So today is day 30 of my Wegovy journey, and it is my last day on the 1.5 milligram pills before I move up to the 4 milligram pills. So let's talk a little bit about what's happened these last sort of, what would that be, 4 days now? 3-4 days? Since we last spoke, and then at the very end of this video I will be doing a summary of the entire month, my entire first month on Wegovy, so please stick around to watch that, and I'll try to give as much information as I can based on an entire month, an entire 4 weeks on the starting dose of the Wegovy pills. So what has changed in the last 4 days? Not too much, to be honest. I've been doing pretty well on the diet in general. Not amazing, I haven't been eating like healthy, but I've been sticking to my goals and have lost some weight. I'll talk a bit more about the actual weight I believe that I've lost in total, you know, in the summary at the end. But yeah, still losing a steady amount of weight. I did actually today go for my first drinks on these tablets, so that's new. I'd been hearing a lot of people talking in person and online saying that, you know, their relationship with alcohol and the effects of alcohol had really changed when they started on these types of GLP-1 medications. But I'll be honest with you, I went out, had like 4 pints, which is, you know, standard sort of for me, and I didn't really feel any different. You know, I definitely didn't feel more drunk. I don't think it made me feel more sober, you know, it was just about the normal level, really. My stomach was a little bit bad earlier on after the drinks, which, you know, I think that can happen anytime you drink, and with a slower stomach emptying and alcohol being a stomach irritant, I think that's kind of pretty obvious. So maybe that might eventually lead me to slow down on the alcohol bit. And I'm not a massive drinker as it is. But the good news is that it kind of hasn't also put me off. You know, I was quite scared actually about having my first drinks on these tablets. But yeah, the effects were totally fine and didn't feel too bad afterwards. So I will probably continue. You know, I haven't yet been really drunk on them, so that might be a different story another day. But yeah, the actual drinking on it, it's totally fine, really. So I think in reality that will probably do for talking about the last 4 days, because I think a lot of it is probably going to be sort of covered in the summary that I'm going to do. So with that being said, let's just skip ahead to my entire month summary on the 1.5 milligram Wegovy semaglutide tablets. So I'm going to sort of frame this summary in sort of 4 parts based on 4 questions, effectively. So the questions are going to be: what were the main issues that I had and side effects? What were the positive effects of taking the tablets? How much weight did I actually lose overall? And what would I do differently if I was to do the month again? So please stick around. If you are interested in any of those things, please stick around until the end of this video. So what were the main issues that I had and the main side effects that I had? Well, I think anyone that's sort of watched any of the previous videos at all might get a bit of an inkling into what I'm going to say here. And I think they are the most common side effects. So this kind of wasn't, you know, unexpected at all. I would say I didn't have any real unexpected side effects. And they definitely sort of weaned and, you know, came on and off in various points during the month. Basically, they weren't continuous side effects by any means. And the first main one that was that I did suffer from quite a bit of acid reflux. Now, how much of this I could put down to just the tablets is difficult, because I had a bit of it before and my diet was really, really poor before taking the tablets. So, you know, that there was that there anyway. But it definitely seemed like it sort of leveled up a notch really when I started taking these tablets. And again, you know, I noticed on the days when I was eating sort of blander food and being more careful with my food choices, the acid reflux was less. And times when I, you know, ate a bit less, it was less. So, you know, I think it maybe did have some sort of, I do believe it, you know, probably was caused a little bit by me, you know, eating big amounts when my stomach was sort of maybe telling me not to. But yeah, that was definitely the main symptom. And I will admit, this last week, even with some bad food choices and, like I mentioned, the alcohol and everything, it actually hasn't been too bad. I haven't noticed it really bad at all, sort of, at least in the last 4 days. So that's really good. And then there was sort of other symptoms. I did have nausea, and it was a kind of a strange nausea. You know, when I was reading up about it before and talking to people on Reddit and people I knew that were on the drug, a lot of them just reported like a normal nausea, you know, especially just after taking the tablet. But mine sort of came and went as it pleased, really. There was no real sort of pattern to it necessarily, and it was also accompanied by other symptoms that you expect sometimes, you know, like if you travel sick and something. I personally get, you know, a little bit of numbness in my limbs for some reason, and like a weird sort of jumpy feeling in my chest, kind of hard to explain, but, you know, like when you go over a roller coaster, that kind of thing. I had a lot of that with the nausea, and again, this did sort of, it was worse at the beginning, I believe, and got quite a bit better. But I did have that, so I did have the nausea. And there were times, if I wasn't really careful with what I ate, combined with the tablets, I believe, when the nausea was like really bad to the point where I thought I could be sick. But again, you know, it wasn't enough to make me stop or even really sort of consider stopping, I guess. I remember one point I spoke about, I think on the last video, maybe even the one before, where I said that there was a point where I was at night thinking, should I just quit it, because I felt really ill. But, you know, that was just a little flash. That was just a bit of a mixture of everything, I think, a bit of tiredness and worrying about the money side of it, on top of the nausea. But, you know, it was manageable. The nausea's been manageable. You know, I've been having things like ginger tea sparingly, which has sort of helped settle the stomach a bit. So yes, the nausea's not been too bad. And I did have at the very beginning, I think I mentioned, some really bad headaches in the first couple of days. Now again, I think this was just when my body was getting used to it, because it did go, but they were pretty horrific headaches the first couple of days. But, you know, I persevered through, and that seemed to have got a lot better. And again, I think a lot of that comes down to how much you're drinking. I think dehydration plays a big part in things like the headache side of it. And I think that's a good time to talk about the other thing that I noticed that's kind of, you know, quite a negative, and one of the big issues that I've had, which I think, again, I spoke about before, is the sort of lack of thirst cues. It really has been apparent recently that I have been drinking a lot less than I should. It's weird. It's like, it's kind of hard to explain, because I am waking up feeling thirsty, but it's like I have a few sips of water and it goes away quite a bit, even though I really should have more. But today was like yesterday was like a really prime example of that, because I woke up and had a few sips of water and put it down, and then, you know, our brain just didn't really tell me to drink again, even though I felt thirsty, until a lot later. And it comes sort of 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I picked up my bottle and thought, oh my God, I've literally had like a smidgen of water for like first 5-6 hours a day. And, you know, I really didn't feel that great around then, because I guess I was just dehydrated. So, you know, that is a big issue, and it's something I'm trying to control, as I showed before with like the water app. and just trying to like really sort of remind myself to drink, as silly as that sounds. And with that being said, I think that kind of covers the worst parts of it. You know, a lot of people say they've been struggling with like, you know, enjoyment of things on these tablets, even on the starting dose and things, but I've had none of that really. I would say it's mostly just been the nausea and stomach issues have been the main issues. So now let's move on to the positive effects of the pill. I would say in general, which is, you know, kind of what they're meant to do, but it has reduced the food noise quite a bit. I think I have said that it's been a bit up and down. There's been some days where I've felt like I could easily pig out. And then there's other days when I've noticed it really sort of can seem to put the brakes on when I'm eating and say, you know, you've had enough, stop. Makes me feel sometimes a lot fuller than I would have before. So I definitely think it has reduced the food noise. What's kind of just worrying me or making me a bit confused is, like I say, is this fact that it's not constant. You know, one day the food noise could be really diminished, and then the next day it can sort of come back and I want to snack a bit more and have to use real self-control. So it's almost like that part of it's sometimes working and sometimes not. So we'll see how that goes as time moves on. I think it's another difficult one with regards to whether it's helping me be healthy in general, because I'm not really sure it has. Like I think I've said before, and I suppose I could have spoke about this on the negative effects, but it's making me sort of feel a bit lazy when it comes to food choices. And again, this could just be me. It's probably not the pill, but I've just felt since sort of taking these pills, I've been reaching for the easy options a bit too much. Which has led for me to make a lot of more sort of unhealthy choices than I thought I'd be doing on these tablets. So that's really not good. And that's something that I really need to address. And I'm hoping when I next put a video out, you know, I might have addressed that a bit and come back and tell you that I've been making healthier choices. So I wouldn't say it's done that to a massive extent, you know, but I suppose if it's making you eat less bad food in a way that is, you know, a net positive, you know, even if I'm not eating ridiculously healthy. Does that make sense? Kind of makes sense to me. Hopefully we're on the same wavelength. And I guess that's kind of it in terms of the positives. You know, the drugs are meant for food noise suppression and keeping you fuller longer. So that's kind of, I guess, only really going to be the two positives. But again, you know, it does also affects your blood sugar, and I must admit I haven't felt like I've had any like real sugar crashes and things, and I strangely, you know, as you'll see on the next part, seem to have lost weight even when I've not been making great food choices. So again, I suppose that is a great way to segue into the next question, which is, how much weight did I lose? Now, I think, as I've sort of mentioned before, my weight loss, even though you might not know it to look at me, you know, I don't really see it when I'm looking in the mirror, but has been quite dramatic, really. Over the course of the month, I have actually lost just under a stone in weight, apparently. You know, if you count my original weigh-in of 16 stone 4, yeah, I've lost nearly a stone. I'll just grab my phone, just so I can double check I'm getting these figures right. Yeah, so just so I can get this right, if I have a little look. Yes, so on the 15th of July, when I took my very first dose of the 1.5 milligram Wegovy tablets, I weighed 16 stone 4 pounds, 16, 4.2 to be technically correct. And my weigh-in this morning, and on my weigh-in this morning, which is the 15th of August, I weighed in at 15 stone 4.8. So literally, if my maths is correct, that's literally 0.2 pounds off of a stone. Now it does seem quite drastic. You know, when I look in the mirror and things, I don't look to me like somebody who's lost a stone. You know, I'll let you be the judge if you think you can see some loss. But so part of me almost doesn't want to believe it and thinks it's a lot of like water weight and maybe muscle loss. But I will say that some of my clothes do seem to fit quite a lot better, actually. Again, I suppose that could be to do with the fact I was a lot more bloated before, but I'm not sure. But you know, this t-shirt is actually, you notice I wear a lot of football shirts, but I brought this probably a couple of weeks before I started the Wegovy, and I thought it was a nice top, but it did actually feel like quite tight on me, on my belly, and I'm really conscious of things like that. You know, when I put stuff on, it needs to be not too loose but not too tight, and this felt a bit tight, so I sort of put it away, and then I got it out today and put it on, and yeah, there's a little bit of, you know, it's a little bit looser. I wouldn't say that I've lost a stone really when I actually like look at myself and how things fit and everything, because a stone is like a real big amount of weight to lose, especially in a month. Like, you're meant to lose between 1 and 2 pounds. So if I have lost 14 pounds almost in a month, that's to the extreme really. And it would almost certainly mean that I have lost like quite a bit of muscle mass across the body, or something else going on. But I don't want to let that discourage you. You know, there definitely has been some real weight loss in this month. You know, whether it's, you know, what it's to do with and where the weight has come from, not quite sure. The scales say I've lost a nice mixture of fat, water, muscle, and somehow even bone density, you know, bone mass. So who knows exactly. But yeah, there has been almost a stone in weight loss. If we're talking about the positive effects, I guess that's the one, isn't it? That's why we're on these tablets, or thinking about these tablets. So in total, nearly a stone in weight in a month. So now let's have a little bit of a think and a little bit of a talk about what I would do differently if I was to start and do this month again. I wouldn't do any real drastic changes. I think I did all the right things in terms of prep. If you haven't watched it, please go back and watch the intro video to this series. And maybe even the first week video. In fact, there's a little bit littered throughout all the videos about my prep. But yeah, about what I did before starting the tablets, and, you know, some of the supplements were on one of the last videos. Some of the supplements that I brought and equipment I brought before, just to make life a little bit easier, and some of the checks I had done. So I think I did really good in terms of prep. I think I set realistic expectations, which have kind of been smashed, because I was hoping for like a real, you know, gradual loss, and I was really worried about the side effects and things as well. So I think the fact I just went into it sort of level-headed, knowing that some of the effects might be a bit of a placebo, or you know, something to do with the amount of food I've been eating. You know, I sort of tried to go into it level-headed. So I think I did everything right in that terms. I think the biggest thing I want to address at the moment, and the things that I really regret not doing this month, are drinking more water. I think I mentioned that earlier. Like, I really think I've been dehydrating my body quite badly recently. So that's something I definitely want to improve, and I'm going to improve on. And it's something, you know, if I was to advise someone, I would say, you know, get a water reminder app and just do all you can to just make sure you're getting enough water when on these tablets. Is really important. I think a lot of the problems I've had and how funny I've been feeling sometimes have been more that than anything else, I think. And another one would be doing exercise. You know, I've been really bad in the sense that I knew that muscle loss could be a real problem on these tablets, and yet I've not really addressed that. I've really not been doing the weights as much as I should, and I've not been hitting my protein goals. So I would definitely do that if I could start again, because there's not a lot else you can do about things like side effects or any of that really, apart from the things I've already discussed before, I guess, and preparing for them in a way. So I think it's just that I definitely want to address the water, and that's what I'm going to try and do. And I really want to start doing weights more often. Just look after my body generally well. You know, if I'm losing weight, I also want to be healthy on the whole, not just lose weight. So that's basically it. So thank you for watching if you've watched so far, and my next video will be on the 4 milligram tablets. It'll be my first week on the 4 milligram tablets. It's going to be really interesting, I think, to see how different I feel, or maybe how I feel the same. You know, who knows? Maybe there won't be a big difference, but I think that'll be really interesting. So please like and subscribe if you want to see how that goes, and watch any future videos. And I hope this has, in even a teeny tiny bit way, you know, been helpful. So with that being said, I'm going to go and get a drink, and I'm going to go and chill out. So thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you on the next one. Ta-da!